My sister entered the palace as a noble concubine. The emperor knew she had another lover, so he maliciously matched me with her lover. When the imperial decree granting the marriage arrived, I was forced by my mother to embroider my wedding dress at home. The embroidery needle pricked my finger, and I stared at the oozing blood in fascination. I never imagined that my future husband would be the man I had always considered my brother-in-law. The emperor granted the marriage, and the Imperial Astronomical Observatory selected an auspicious date. To outsiders, it seemed like the emperor was showing his importance to the prime minister's mansion and the Ningyuan marquisate. But we knew his motives. Aining, he's the emperor, he's forcing me. It was the first time I'd seen my sister so hysterical. She cried and laughed, smashing everything she could get her hands on, with no trace of the noble concubine's dignity. I watched her quietly, letting her vent. When she calmed down, she finally brought the conversation back to me. Aining, I can't leave. I've let Mingyuan down, but Mingyuan is a man of great ambition. He can't let me bring him down. Your Majesty is right. We're sisters and you know me best. I can only ask you please take care of Mingyuan for me. My sister wasn't right. Although we're sisters, I don't know her. I looked at her quietly. What about me? My sister paused. Mingyuan has watched you grow up. He would never hurt you. I forced a smile, but my heart was filled with desolation. Yet I was also thankful that what I sought was never love. That day, with a long wedding dress and a sedan chair parading through the streets, I married Gu Mingyuan. I knew he was cunning and ruthless. He inherited the title of Ningyuan Marquis at such a young age that I wondered how many iron-blooded tricks he possessed. I witnessed him execute his own men who betrayed him, and even wielded a knife to torture a traitor to death on the execution ground. I also knew he was a man of passion. My sister had been frail since childhood, but to save her, he bravely rode thousands of miles alone, wounded from battle, to find her medicine. After returning, he didn't want my sister to see him so heartbroken and worried, so he gave the medicine to my father and stayed outside my sister's door all night. This man, who should have had no connection to me in my life, suddenly became my husband. This was destined to be a marriage without expectations. Sitting in the dazzling red bridal chamber, I spent half the night calculating. Lai Ju's business has been booming lately, while Qing Fengtang's has been slow. I felt a little annoyed. When Gu Mingyuan entered, I had already undressed and fallen asleep. The cold embrace startled me from my restless dream. Opening my eyes, I saw Gu Mingyuan's handsome face, tinged with intoxication. My lord. In a split second, I sprang to my feet, struggling out of his arms. He seemed quite drunk, his eyes hazy as he watched me wrap myself tightly in the quilt. His moist lips parted softly. Yenna, why didn't you wait for me and went to sleep? A chill ran through my heart, and my grip on the quilt unconsciously tightened, my knuckles turning white. The Marquis is drunk. I'm not your sister, I'm Rongning. Rongning. The lust in his eyes faded, and he shook his head, looking at me again in the flickering candlelight. Sorry, I'm drunk. I bit my lip and said nothing, wrapping myself tightly in the quilt, watching him warily. He noticed the wariness in my eyes and finally sighed, Aining, go to sleep. I'll rest on the couch next to you. Perhaps fearing I'd misunderstand, he quickly explained, it would be bad for your reputation if I were to leave you alone in the bridal chamber on your wedding night. I said nothing, lowered the bed curtains, and huddled in the dark corner of the bed. That night, neither of us slept well. 2. When I woke up the next day, Gu Mingyuan was already out of bed. He was changing with his back to me, his tall figure blocking out most of the light coming in from the window. I rolled over, sprawled across the bed, and watched him quietly. Perhaps because it was daylight, my fear of him gradually faded. I had seen with my own eyes how he loved my eldest sister. How passionately, how unwaveringly, how heart-wrenchingly. I also knew he was the most distinguished young man in the capital, a hero with illustrious military exploits, and countless women were fascinated by him. but I could no longer hold any hope for him. He and I were in a perpetual deadlock. Since there was no hope anymore, I should face the future with a calm mind. He buckled his belt and turned to look at me. Seeing that I was awake and still staring at him intently, I was stunned for a moment. "Mother sent word that you don't need to pay your respects this morning. You can sleep a little longer." His voice was soft, just as attentive and caring as it always was when my elder sister and I went out to play. "Little Aining, you can sleep a little longer. We'll wake you up when we get up. Madam is so kind and caring. As a junior, I shouldn't let my dowry lead me to pride." With that, he called in Qingbi, the bride's daughter, to help me dress. Gu Mingyuan hesitated. After he finished dressing himself, he picked up a book and began reading while waiting for me. My elder sister was right. Gu Mingyuan was a good man. Except for last night's drunken outburst, he would never embarrass me. Old Madame Gu had long known about Gu Mingyuan and my elder sister's relationship. She had always treated us both with kindness, and was particularly interested in my elder sister as her daughter-in-law. When she saw me, her eyes were filled with unconcealed sadness. After drinking tea, she took my hand and slipped the jade bracelet from her wrist onto mine. "Thank you, Mother. My dear child, this will be your home from now on. I've watched you grow up and will love you like my own daughter. If Mingyuan ever causes you any injustice, just come to me. I'll support you." I know Madame Gu means well, but how can kindness be without a reason? My mother's words before I left home flashed through my mind. Yes, now that I'm a wife of the Gu family, it's my duty to expand their family. That's probably all Madame Gu wants. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but glance at Gu Mingyuan, who stood quietly by my side. He seemed lost in thought. Noticing my gaze, he snapped back to his senses. "Don't worry, Mother. I'll take good care of Aining, and won't let her suffer any injustice." "Won't she suffer any injustice?" I found it ridiculous. If I had any desire for him, then I would have been filled with resentment from the day I decided to marry him. 3. Because of his marriage, the court granted Gu Mingyuan 3 days of rest. For the first 2 days, he didn't touch me. On the third night, as usual, he went to sleep on the short couch. I tugged at his sleeve. "Aining, what's wrong? Gu Mingyuan, do you want a child?" "What?" A puzzled expression froze on his face. "Since I'm married to you, I have to give you a child." His breathing hitched, and he frantically pulled his sleeve away from my hand. "Aining, you're still young. There's no rush." I asked these questions with all my heart, feeling somewhat embarrassed by the rejection. "You don't want me to have a child. It's okay. I can take you a concubine." "Su Rongning." His suddenly loud voice startled me. "We've only been married for 3 days, and you're already taking a concubine." I didn't mean that. I belatedly realized I'd said the wrong thing. He already had someone in his life, and marrying me was a last resort. How could he tolerate another woman? I frantically tried to explain, but I was speechless. I could only stare at him blankly. He was frightened and momentarily panicked. He reached out to touch me, but I dodged. His hand froze in mid-air, and then he let out a wry smile. "Aining, you're actually blaming us, aren't you? You clearly shouldn't have gotten involved in these filthy affairs, but unfortunately, none of us escaped." I saw his eyes tear up as he smiled wryly. "Well, we're all pitiful." From that night on, Gu Mingyuan began to spend the night in the study. I thought it was a good idea. He was at ease, and so was I. 4. Old Madame Gu is in good health, and with her managing the household, I'm happy to have some free time. I usually spend most of my time in the shop. I've been running Iju, Qingfengtang, and Zuixiangli since I was 15, and the success has been remarkable in the past 3 years. This is the property my uncle secretly gave me. He originally gave a share to my sister, but she refused, so I took it all. My uncle is the richest businessman in the world, and I've always dreamed of having endless money like him. When a woman publicly engages in business, it always stirs controversy. With my uncle's recommendation, I hired several shopkeepers, and I stayed behind the scenes as the boss. Very few people know me. Besides my sister, even my parents don't know me. Gu Mingyuan, of course, doesn't know me either. Gu Mingyuan is always busy with official duties and never comes home, so we rarely see each other. My life isn't much different from when I was still in my boudoir. I'm not a very cheerful person, but I do have one or two close friends in Beijing. Qi Yun, the third daughter of Minister Qi's family, is my closest friend and knows all about me. After we got married, she's been the one who's been with me most often, and she'll even come to the mansion to spend time with me when she's free. Rongning, who did I think I met yesterday? I backed away, my head tilted high, tugging intently at the kite string. Who else could have caught third Miss Qi's eye but a handsome young man? Qi Yun smiled and said, "This time, you know that handsome young man too." Watching the kite soar higher and higher, I felt a surge of joy, and my voice brightened. "You said it, why keep us in suspense?" "It was your cousin, Qin Shuming." I froze for a moment, and the kite's flight was blown off course by a headwind. I quickly pulled at the string. "Cousin Qin has returned to the capital. Aren't the results about to be announced? You often praise his talent, so I'm sure he'll pass this time." My retreating body suddenly bumped into a wall of flesh, and a scent of bitter bamboo instantly enveloped me. I hurriedly turned around. "Is the Marquis back?" 5. Gu Mingyuan smiled gently, nodded at Qi Yun, and then looked at me. Aining is usually bored at the mansion. Miss Qi-san can come and keep her company. Qi Yun winked at me. I'm relieved that Marquis Gu loves Rongning so much. With that, she hurriedly took her leave. I brought your favorite snacks from Cheng's Hizai. I pursed my lips and smiled. Thank you, Marquis. I've been so busy at the government lately that I haven't had time to look after you. Is everything going well at the mansion? Everything is fine. Mother is taking good care of me. I looked at the kite flying high in the sky, and I could feel Gu Mingyuan's gaze on me. He was acting a little strange today. He and I had little to talk about. A strong gust of wind blew, snapping the kite string. Untethered, the kite suddenly drifted away. He stood behind me, his hands behind his back, speaking calmly. Although being free brings freedom, it also means one is at the mercy of the wind. When the wind settles, one will eventually fall to dust. Your Majesty, you have a point. He frowned slightly. You weren't this distant from me before. You and I are already married, and calling me Your Majesty is a bit too formal. The wind ruffled my hair. He reached out for his hand, but I took a step back, avoiding him. Your Majesty has fought for our country and rendered great service. Calling you Your Majesty is a sign of respect. How can I be so formal? He said nothing more, his gaze growing deeper as he looked at me. I met my father-in-law at court today, and he told us to return to the Su family for a reunion tomorrow. I thought it was just an ordinary family dinner, but when I got home, I found out my sister had also returned. She had been in the palace for 3 months, and had gained considerable favor. The emperor granted her nearly every request, so when he heard she missed home, he immediately allowed her to leave. I couldn't ignore the tense breaths of the men around me when they saw my sister. I couldn't ignore the reddening of my sister's eyes. I bowed to my parents and sister as if nothing had happened. Gu Mingyuan hesitated to speak repeatedly, his eyes never leaving my sister. I will never forget the day the imperial edict ordering my sister to enter the palace arrived, and Gu Mingyuan, in a panic, climbed over the wall in the middle of the night to find my sister. He, always so reserved and self-possessed, burst into tears for the first time, desperate to elope with my sister. I'll never forget how, upon seeing me, who looked so similar to my sister, standing beside her, he blurted out that the Su family had more than one daughter. Since I looked so much like her, perhaps I could be a substitute. He said it wasn't like I hadn't stood in for her before. My sister had been well behaved and obedient since she was young. The only thing she'd done was fall in love with Gu Mingyuan. They often went out together, and whenever anything happened, I'd pretend to be my sister to handle it. Gradually, seeing how I'd managed to impersonate her several times without getting caught, my sister grew bolder, even going to some banquets on my behalf. But now he's asking me to enter the palace in my sister's place. He was in agony and despair at the time, and his words didn't come naturally. I don't blame him. But I'll always remember what he said. After all, my sister treated me well since I was a child. In this situation, all three of us are innocent. I wanted to give them some time alone, hoping they could talk it out. But seeing my intention, my sister just stroked my hair helplessly. Aining, I'm now the emperor's consort Yun, and Mingyuan is your husband. We will no longer have any contact, and there's nothing to say to each other. Sister only hopes that you, him, and the Su family will all be safe and prosperous. Everything in the past is but a fleeting illusion. We must all look forward. Look forward. But my sister exuded a strong sense of melancholy, not one who looked forward. 7. I sat absent-mindedly in the carriage heading back to Gu's house, when I suddenly heard a commotion outside. I lifted the curtain and saw, not far away, gongs and drums beating the road. A high-spirited young man, draped in red silk, sat on a tall horse. This year's top scholar is truly handsome. I heard he's only just arrived, yet so promising. Indeed, I wonder which young lady would be so fortunate to be the wife of the top scholar. Top scholar Qin, please accept my flowers. Qin Shuming's gaze inadvertently turned towards me, and just as our eyes were about to meet, I panicked and flung the curtain aside. What's wrong? Gu Mingyuan had been resting his eyes when he heard the noise and opened them. Nothing, he said faintly. Young Master Qin's success as top scholar is also due to the Su family's efforts. Your father-in-law will surely be very pleased. Qin Shuming is a distant cousin of the Su family. His family isn't wealthy. 2 years ago, he came to the capital and stayed at the Su family's house. He received considerable help with his studies from his father. I didn't respond, but he, uncharacteristically, asked, when you weren't looking for your sister, you were always with him. Did you know the first thing he did the day he passed the imperial examination was to go to the Su mansion and propose marriage? My forehead jumped. I truly didn't know. Gu Mingyuan misunderstood my surprised expression. Marrying me would also separate you, wouldn't it? I had noticed his awful state, and he felt pained, and he didn't want to make it easy for me. My lord, please be careful with your words. I have nothing to do with him, and I never thought of marrying him. The carriage suddenly jolted. He reached out to help me. I grabbed the chair to steady myself, then shifted a little, creating some distance between us. But uncharacteristically, he pulled me into his arms. The curtains blew in the wind, and I, sitting in Gu Mingyuan's arms, saw Qin Shuming's face, a sad smile, as he looked at me from a distance. You may not have feelings for him, but he might still have feelings for you. It's better to cut it short and stop him from thinking about you. The carriage turned the corner and Qin Shuming disappeared from sight. I rose from Gu Mingyuan's arms and sighed softly. Your Majesty should know that since the imperial decree granting the marriage, on that day, all thoughts, whether necessary or unnecessary, were completely extinguished. Neither Qin Shuming nor I. I didn't look at him again, nor did I catch a glimpse of his desolate expression. 8. We'd been married for over 3 months, but we hadn't consummated our marriage. Even though the old lady knew Gu Mingyuan had a lingering concern, she was still a mother after all. After hinting at it to me, she went back to Gu Mingyuan and talked to him for a long time. Unable to avoid it, Gu Mingyuan had no choice but to move the bedding from the study back to the bedroom. That night, Qingbi bathed me with a worried look on her face. I watched her sigh and groan, and I just found it funny. Miss, you're still laughing. My husband isn't interested in you, so why would he put you in such a difficult position? You're overthinking things. I sank deeper into the tub. It's just a marriage, nothing more than that. It's the parents' orders and the matchmaker's words. What can I do with it? If it wasn't Gu Mingyuan today, it would have been someone else. As long as these people don't ruin my fortune, I'll let them be. But if it were young Master Qin, it would be different. Qingbi, I shouted. Don't ever say that again. When I returned to my room, Gu Mingyuan was reading a book at the desk, draped in a robe. The dim light hurts my eyes. Let's read tomorrow. His face moved from the book to rest on me as I undressed. In a few days, it will be your 18th birthday. Is there anything you want? Thank you, my lord, for remembering. Don't worry. After running around several shops that day, I was so exhausted that I just wanted to fall asleep. Mother has been talking to you a lot lately, but has the topic of children troubled you? I lay down, wrapped myself in the quilt, and forced my eyes to look at him. Mother treats me very well, and won't give me any trouble, and you don't have to worry about me giving you any trouble. I remember discussing this topic shortly after we got married. Whether he wants children or not, and who he wants to have them with, is his business. I won't say a word. He choked, his face grim. He put down his book and got into bed. A rustling sounded beside me. He lay still, somewhat stiffly. Seeing he had no other thoughts, I drifted off to sleep. The scent of bitter bamboo lingered around me. Fortunately, it wasn't unpleasant. After a few days of peace and quiet, news arrived that my sister had been crowned empress. The reason was that my sister was pregnant. 9. The enthronement ceremony was followed by a palace banquet, and the emperor specifically ordered Gu Mingyuan and I to attend. Unexpectedly, we ran into Qin Shuming at the palace gate. Greetings, Lord Qin. When did Aining become so distant from me? His voice was bitter, and I deliberately ignored the deep affection in his eyes. I told Gu Mingyuan that there was nothing between him and me. Not entirely. It's just that Qin Shuming had truly offered me his passionate love, and I ultimately let him down. He once asked me, Aining, if I passed the imperial examination, would you be willing to be my wife? I had been with him day and night for 2 years, always treating him like a brother, never harboring any other thoughts. Brother Shuming, stop joking. His face flushed. I'm serious. Aining, I truly love you. If you're willing, I'll spend my whole life lovingly with you, treating you like a treasure, and never letting you suffer the slightest injustice. I was frightened by him and began to avoid him, intentionally or unintentionally. After the imperial examination, I heard his mother wasn't feeling well, so he hurriedly said goodbye and headed home. He told me to think it over, saying it was a matter of mutual affection, and wouldn't force anything. He said if he failed this time, he wouldn't bring it up again. But before the results were announced, before he returned to Beijing, I married Gu Mingyuan. To be honest, I don't have many regrets. But sometimes in my dreams, looking at the man beside me, who was sleeping with me but not dreaming the same thing, I selfishly thought, if I had married Qin Shuming, at least he would have been truly loved. With time, I might have grown attached to Qin Shuming. But as for Gu Mingyuan, I smiled with relief. Aining is married now, so naturally she's become more sensible. Lord Qin seems to have lost a lot of weight. I heard he just returned to the capital after helping to control the floods in the southwest. You should rest well and take care of yourself. Qin Shuming smiled too, his eyes as gentle as ever. Yes, I'll listen to Aining. Ahem. Gu Mingyuan interrupted with a dry cough. He glanced at me from the corner of his eye, then glanced sideways at Qin Shuming. Without a word, he took my hand and walked through the palace. Outside, I couldn't resist him, so I let him lead me along. Officials along the way complimented him, saying, Lord Gu and his wife are truly deeply in love. 10. The male and female members of the palace sat separately. Since I haven't seen my sister for a year, perhaps because of her pregnancy, she's gained a lot of weight. But seeing her today, I felt the sadness in her eyes was even more pronounced. When she saw me, Yocheong took my hand, her eyes watering, and she seemed hesitant to speak. "Sister, what's wrong?" She finally couldn't hold back a tear, and to prevent anyone from noticing, she quickly wiped it away and forced a smile. "Nothing, sister, I haven't seen Aining in ages, and I'm just overjoyed today." But she definitely wasn't crying tears of joy. Since she didn't say anything, I couldn't ask further. Sister must have suffered some injustice in the palace. Even so, she didn't forget to give the news Walixiang cosmetics I brought to the visiting officials and their wives, promoting my work. While I was out shopping, I stumbled upon this Walixiang ointment. It has a delicate and pleasant fragrance, and Your Majesty is very fond of it. I thought such good things should be shared, so I'm offering it to you all today. Everyone hurriedly thanked her, and I knew the first step in launching the new product had been successful. In this capital, the money earned by this noble lady is the easiest to make. I bid my sister a contented farewell and exited the palace, only to see Gu Mingyuan, drunk and supported by 2 young eunuchs. "How did you drink so much?" Just as I finished, Qin Shuming staggered out. I couldn't help but frown and hurriedly asked the eunuchs if they had misbehaved in the palace. It was unthinkable to get drunk at the emperor's banquet. Madame Gu, His Majesty was in high spirits, so he drank a few more cups with the 2 gentlemen. He hadn't misbehaved in the palace. His Majesty instructed me to escort them safely back to the palace. I felt relieved. "Thank you, eunuch." Aining. "Madam." Gu Mingyuan suddenly pushed aside the 2 eunuchs supporting him, and lunged towards me. I hurriedly caught him, his head resting on my shoulder, making it difficult for me to move. He continued to mutter drunken words that I could barely make out. "Please, eunuch, help Marquis Gu to his feet." I hadn't expected Gu Mingyuan, usually the most self-disciplined and respectful of men, to be so fussy as a child, insisting I help him. I stretched my arm, which had been hurt by him, and stood aside, letting the eunuch help him into the carriage. Qin Shuming watched quietly the entire time. I nodded and was about to get in, but he stopped me. "Aining." I turned to look at him. He said quietly, "You don't love him at all." I smiled. "Love is a luxury." 11. Gu Mingyuan drank the hangover soup and soon fell into a deep sleep. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by the warmth of his furnace-like body. He was holding me tightly in his arms, using both his hands and feet. Unable to break free, I whispered, "Gu Mingyuan, let go. I can't breathe." He stood motionless. I struggled mightily, and he finally awoke. With sleepy eyes, he glanced down at me in his arms, then leaned over and placed a quick kiss on my neck. "Gu Mingyuan, wake up." He acted as if he hadn't heard me. He rolled over on top of me and began to undress me. Iron. At that moment, I felt like I'd been hit head-on. My mind went blank, and then I felt a chill run through my body. I was suddenly jolted awake by a bite from his chest. "Paw!" A slap sent his head careening sideways. I didn't know where the strength came from, but I pushed him away, haphazardly wrapped my coat around me, and ran out of the room. As I rushed out, I suddenly realized I had nowhere else to go. The night wind was chilly. It chilled me to the bone, but my mind was remarkably clear. The concierge, unsure of why, opened the door for me. As I left, Gu Mingyuan's voice echoed from behind me. "Stop the young mistress." I ran at the sound. At least tonight, I didn't want to stay in this place any longer. I sat in a drunken state all night. At dawn, someone knocked on the door downstairs. Thinking it was Gu Mingyuan, I told the waiter not to let him in. The waiter said with embarrassment, "Miss, it's Lord Qin." Qin Shuming came in, his eyes bloodshot and dark circles beneath them, a sign that he hadn't slept all night. "Aining, I've got an idea." "I've got an idea." I'll ask the emperor for permission to leave the capital for an out-of-town post. I'll take you with me, okay? I know you're unhappy, and I just want you to be happy. Aining, come with me. Where does Lord Qin want my wife to go with you? Gu Mingyuan's cold, hard voice suddenly interrupted. I was naive. How could the waiter stop him? His face was livid, and he stared at me intently. Where is Aining going? Qin Shuming shielded me behind him. Lord Gu, you and I are old acquaintances. We all know many things. Aining is the most innocent. Please, sir, let her go. Humph. Gu Mingyuan sneered. Aining is my wife, married after 3 matchmakers and 6 betrothals. Now that she's married to me, there's no turning back. Qin Shuming, you've repeatedly offended my wife, and I've repeatedly tolerated you. Do you really think I wouldn't dare touch you? Gu Mingyuan's words shone with ruthlessness, and my heart skipped a beat. It didn't seem like he was just joking. Lord Qin was only joking. Why take it so seriously, Your Majesty? Aining. Qin Shuming looked at me, startled as I stood up. I smiled bitterly. Cousin, everyone has their own destiny. Perhaps this is mine. Don't make things complicated. You have great ambitions and a bright future. Don't act on impulse. 12. I followed Gu Mingyuan back to the mansion in silence. As soon as I entered, I ordered the maid to clean up the side room. Don't be so irritable, Aining. I lowered my eyes and nodded. Your Majesty, you're worrying too much. Rongning wouldn't dare. She's just used to sleeping alone. The maids, upon hearing the order, started to clean up. You're not allowed to. Gu Mingyuan shouted. He was usually gentle, but his sudden harsh tone startled everyone. The maids looked from him to me, feeling very embarrassed. I understood. I lowered my head and said, since Your Majesty doesn't allow it, forget it. Let's go about our business. I was about to return to my room, but he grabbed my wrist and pulled me towards him. I couldn't discern his emotions. Aining, is it because of what happened last night? I was drunk and my mind wasn't clear. Rongning should apologize to the Marquis. It was Rongning who ruined his mood, and even bothered him to go to such lengths to find me. The hand on my wrist suddenly tightened, and I groaned in pain. I'd never seen anyone clearly before. When Gu Mingyuan threw me onto the bed and pressed himself against me, I couldn't understand him anymore. I had imagined this day would come. But I hadn't imagined it would come so soon. I didn't resist anymore, letting him tear and bite me. He forced me to look at him. My eyes were red, and I looked at him, enduring the unbearable pain. And then he placed his palm over my eyes again. His voice was bitter, Aining, don't do this. He leaned over and kissed me on the lips. A rare moment of tenderness, our intertwined breaths parted once more. He finally softened, returning to his gentle self. Aining, you are my wife. I will no longer consider anyone else. I will be responsible for your life. 13. Gu Mingyuan, having tasted the sweetness, began to make love to me night after night. At first I was uncomfortable. Once I began to appreciate the pleasure, his excessive demands left me exhausted all day. While having lunch with Madame Gu, she noticed my haggard complexion, and whispered a reprimand for Gu Mingyuan's lack of self-control. She then ordered someone to prepare a soup for me to nourish me. I heard you're always out and about during the day. Is there something important? Nothing big, just a few shops I brought as a dowry, and I usually go and look after them. The shopkeeper will naturally take care of those things. You should still take good care of yourself. I put down my soup. Mother is right. Aining is inconsiderate. She should be at home and share more of the burden with you. Old Madame Gu choked. That's not what Mother meant. I understand, Mother. Qi Yun said I'd become a coward after getting married. I let Gu Mingyuan manipulate me without resistance. I just didn't want to waste more of my emotions and energy on my marriage. If going along with him could save me from trouble and free up more energy for the business, that wouldn't be a bad idea. 14. In the 4 years since I took over these businesses, Lai Ju and Zui Lixiang have opened over 20 branches across several major states and counties. Their owner, Yun He, has also become a well-known figure in the business world. I don't have any other hobbies except making money. Recently, Chi-yun mentioned wanting to open a bookstore. I was very supportive, and so I became increasingly busy. Plus, I promised Madame Gu that I would share in the household affairs, leaving me with less energy to deal with Gu Mingyuan at night. The contraceptive soup I secretly drank every day was almost tainting me. A husband can divorce a woman if she remains childless after 3 years of marriage. Unfortunately, our marriage was arranged by the emperor, so he can't divorce me. But Gu Mingyuan couldn't possibly not want the child. Then he could legitimately give me some peace. I had it all planned out, but I didn't expect Gu Mingyuan, now a womanizer, to become so difficult to deal with. The news of my sister's birth arrived quickly. She summoned me to the palace again, and because of the child, she seemed even more loving and gentle. She took my hand and said, "I heard Mingyuan treats you well. That puts my mind at ease." I smiled. "Sister, don't worry about me. Now that you've given birth to the crown prince, I'm sure His Majesty will love you even more. Things are tough in the palace, so you need to take care of yourself." At this point, her expression darkened again, and she gently stroked the child's face in her arms. "You've been married for a year now, so it's time to have a child. If he marries another woman in the future, you'll have someone to rely on." My sister, having studied women's virtues and women's training since childhood, believes that a woman's support lies in her husband and her children. My support has always been myself. I saw my sister pause, then slowly look at me, a look of regret mixed with relief. "Aining, just live a good life outside." "I'm sorry." As she spoke, a palace maid announced that the emperor would be coming to Fini Palace for lunch, and since I was there, she said I could join them. My sister suddenly panicked. She handed the child to the wet nurse and took my hand, her expression anxious. "Aining, go back. The palace rules are strict. If you run into His Majesty, you'll be in trouble. Go back quickly." Unbeknownst to me, I was led out of the palace by the maid she ordered. 15. Upon returning home from the palace, Gu Mingyuan summoned me to his study. He handed me a book, observing my face calmly. "I've already deleted the inappropriate chapters from this volume. Have them printed accordingly." Chi-yun and I selected a batch of books for printing, but to avoid any inappropriate content, we asked Gu Mingyuan to review them. Gu Mingyuan was a man of both literary and military skill, and his knowledge was undeniable. He was genuinely interested. "Thank you, my lord." I took the book and was about to leave when he stopped me again. I looked at him in confusion, his hesitation making me understand. "My sister is fine, and His Majesty is now doting on her." "Your Majesty, don't worry." He froze, staring at me silently for a long moment before whispering, "I was just saying, I tore my sleeve while out today." Aining was a skilled embroiderer back when she was a boudoir girl. "Could you mend it for me?" I frowned. The mansion's accounts have plenty of money. Since the sleeve is torn, why not throw it away and buy a new one? The light in his eyes dimmed a little, but he remained stubborn. "This robe is made of rare material. It was a tribute from the Dalu kingdom. It would be a shame to throw it away." I sighed and asked him to take off the clothes and give them to me. He cheered up again, gleefully taking off his outer robe and handing it to me. "Then I'll trouble you, madam." It wasn't a big deal. The mansion had a special embroiderer, and when I left, I sent for her to meticulously mend Gu Mingyuan's beloved dress. That night, Gu Mingyuan froze, rubbing the patch on the cuff with a look of complete satisfaction. I couldn't help but ask, "Does your husband like this dress so much?" I'm just impressed by Aining's exquisite embroidery. He smiled at me. I hesitated for a moment before saying, Your Majesty, you misunderstood. This was mended by the embroiderer. Aining hasn't used a needle and thread in a while, and she was afraid she'd ruin it for you. But I hope you're satisfied. Gu Mingyuan fell silent. He hung the clothes back in silence, picked me up without a word, and threw me onto the bed. I haven't showered yet, Gu Mingyuan. I'll help you later. Let me go. Let me go. He pinned my struggling legs and began to undress me. Aining, it's time we had a baby. Exhausted, he carried me into the tub and carefully washed me. Leaning over the edge of the tub, I asked him, Since you want children, and I can't have any, why don't you choose a few good concubines for you? He remained silent, carried me back to bed, and then fucked me again. Miss, are you still taking that medicine? Gu Mingyuan had left early in the morning, and Qingbi asked me in a low voice as she entered to attend to him. I rolled over in bed, exhausted and almost unable to get up. A hoarse voice opened my mouth, Drink. What would Aining like to drink? I sobered up instantly. Just some tonic. Gu Mingyuan stood before the screen, staring at me. Madam, you're indeed a little weak. You need some nourishment. I have a better prescription. Please drink mine. I frowned, meeting his gaze. Although he was smiling, there was a hint of coldness in his smile. I knew he must have known. Or perhaps he had already known. I didn't want to beat around the bush anymore and asked, Is it enough for me to bear a child for the Marquis? I just want Aining's child. I nodded. I understand. I stopped drinking the contraceptive soup, and even enthusiastically drank a large bowl of abortion-maintaining medicine after each session. He was unhappy again. I didn't know why Gu Mingyuan had become so difficult to please. 16. Qin Shuming ultimately chose a post outside the capital. The emperor valued his talent and didn't want to let him go. Qin Shuming, however, chose the poorest and most remote prefecture in the Great Zhou. The memorial he presented to the emperor was filled with his ambition to benefit the people of that region, and he even signed a life or death pledge, promising to ensure that the people of this prefecture had enough food within 10 years. The emperor, impressed by his ambition, ultimately granted his approval. I heard the news and arranged for Miss Qi-san to go to the Qinglong temple outside the city to pray. Gu Mingyuan eagerly followed. I asked for a peace amulet for Qin Shuming. Gu Mingyuan, suppressing his jealousy, begged me with a forced smile, Can Aining also ask for one for me? Since you've come here yourself, it's naturally more sincere to ask for it yourself. He then tried to drag me to the marriage temple to kneel down. He was quite pious, married for life, we shall live together till death. I smiled again, Don't worry, Marquis. Your Majesty has granted us a marriage, and this is the only way we will be together in this life. He seemed genuinely hurt by me, his eyes gradually moistening, a blush forming at the corners. Aining, this isn't good. There's no such thing as good or bad. You know all I can think about is you. What else do you want from me? I was also confused. So what do you want from me? Your Majesty wants to marry my sister, so he's giving me to you in marriage. I have no choice. I won't make a fuss, I'll do my best to fulfill my duties as a wife. I'm even willing to take you a concubine. You talked in your sleep at night, hugged me and called my sister's name, but I pretended not to hear. You said you wanted me to bear your child, so I took pregnancy-enhancing medicine every day. Gu Mingyuan, what else do you want from me to satisfy me? That's not it. Aining, I've let it go. I love you now, and I just want you to. Love? I was a bit amused. Gu Mingyuan, why do you insist on this? On the way back, Gu Mingyuan sat silently on the other side of the carriage, silent and silent. I think I've really pissed him off this time. Since things have come to this, even if I try to trick him into saying I love him, what's the harm? Back at the Gu mansion, to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings, I wrote a farewell letter to Qin Shuming and placed the amulet I'd requested in the envelope. After the bookstore opened, business was booming, thanks to its prime location, 2 nearby academies and several inns. Many students traveling to Beijing for the imperial examinations flocked to it and business boomed. Qi Yun, watching the people coming in and out of the bookstore from Lai Yiju's side. The monopoly of knowledge is the most tragic thing a country can suffer. Nowadays, fewer and fewer students from humble backgrounds are able to rise to prominence. I hope our humble contribution can be of some use to them. As long as the books you've acquired at such a high price are worthwhile. We provide the conditions, the rest is up to each individual's luck. 17. The emperor appointed the young prince crown prince, and named him Yan Lin. I heard that the emperor had intended to appoint Gu Mingyuan as the crown prince's tutor during the morning court session, but Gu Mingyuan declined. He came back specifically to tell me about this. I flipped through the account book and nodded. I don't understand what goes on in the court. The Marquis has his own considerations. After all, serving the emperor is like serving a tiger. It's best not to show off too much. I knew I hadn't hit the nail on the head. He had long since grown accustomed to my indifference and smiled nonchalantly, Aining is right. I will definitely not put the Gu family in danger. The next day, another imperial decree arrived from the palace summoning me. But I had just recently visited my sister. Why was I summoned again so soon? Gu Mingyuan had a day off today. He escorted me to the door and gave me a few instructions, but he seemed a little uneasy. Why is Eunuch Su here today? Where's Eunuch Lin from the Empress's side? Eunuch Su was close to the emperor. Presumably, the emperor wanted to surprise my sister, so he sent his own men to pick me up. Eunuch Su, as I'd expected, gave Gu Mingyuan an explanation. But once inside, Eunuch Su didn't take me to Fengyi Palace. Instead, he took me to the imperial study. I hesitated at the door, and Eunuch Su only gave me a gentle smile. The emperor's voice echoed from the imperial study, "Come in." The voice was a little hoarse and dejected. "Your Majesty, your servant greets you." I knelt respectfully. This was my first time meeting the emperor alone, and honestly, I didn't even know what he looked like. But back then, to separate my sister and Gu Mingyuan, he personally drafted the decree granting me marriage to Gu Mingyuan. I heard him suddenly cough, as if he were ill. He didn't ask me to stand up, but coughed for a long time before letting out a heavy breath. "Su Rongning. Your servant is here." "Su Rongning." He called me again. I was puzzled, but I couldn't help but look up at him. When our eyes met, a familiar feeling washed over me. It was a face every bit as handsome as Gu Mingyuan's, but now his eyes were filled with sorrow. "Your Majesty, I'm Su Rongning." His face, already pale to begin with, now paled even more. "Were you the one who attended the incense tasting that day? You were the one who performed the lotus dance." I was stunned. "I'm such a fool. I don't understand what your Majesty is talking about. 2 years ago, didn't you go to Dongzhou?" 18. Dongzhou. I've traveled a lot these past 2 years, and I did go to Dongzhou to open a branch. Also, on the way to Dongzhou, we encountered 3 seriously injured people. However, when I asked the accompanying physician to treat them, 2 people stopped him from removing the mask of another person. When I saw the badges exposed around their waists, I knew they were not ordinary people. To avoid any trouble, I had the physician stop the bleeding briefly, then took them to the local clinic and left. I didn't say anything. The emperor laughed, tears welling in his eyes. "So it was you. I gave you away with my own hands." "Ha ha ha ha. Your Majesty." "Wrong, completely wrong, Rongning. I was completely mistaken." Looking at the nearly frantic emperor, I finally remembered the incense-tasting party he'd mentioned. It was a year ago. I remember it because that incense-tasting party was different from the others. My sister, who was supposed to attend the party, wanted to see Gu Mingyuan off from the capital to provide disaster relief in Heian, so she begged me to go in her place. I had no reason to refuse her. I had grown up, and my features and figure had become even more similar to hers. With my veil on, it was almost impossible to tell us apart unless we were close friends. I had thought I could just sit there quietly, have some tea, and wait for the party to end, but something went wrong. The eldest princess's sudden arrival, and seeing the garden full of beautiful women, instantly piqued her interest and invited the young ladies to showcase their talents. My sister can play chess and the qin, but I can't. I can dance. I've only danced the lotus dance at that incense-tasting party. Was the emperor there that time? The emperor seemed seriously ill. He tried to approach me, but then he started coughing violently again. Your Majesty, would you like to summon the imperial physician? He waved his hand at me, his thin figure swaying as he coughed. I waited for him to calm down, my knees numb from where I knelt. He finally noticed I was still kneeling, and told me to stand. Thank you, Your Majesty. Rongning. He had called my name many times since I entered the imperial study. Your servant is here. My gaze dropped and I caught a glimpse of his fists clenching and unclenching, before finally letting out a long, drawn-out sigh. Is Gu Mingyuan good to you? I arranged your marriage, do you blame me? My woman's intuition told me that if I expressed even the slightest dissatisfaction with this marriage, the emperor would immediately decree a divorce between Gu Mingyuan and me. And then? Will I be locked up in the palace like my sister? I lowered my eyes and whispered, Lord Gu treats me well. I haven't yet thanked Your Majesty for finding me a good match. A good match? The emperor smiled sadly. Does Rongning like him? I wanted to force myself to say I liked him, but in the end, I only managed to utter, whether I like Lord Gu or not, this is the best outcome. The emperor remained silent for a long time, one hand resting on the desk, his body leaning back, and slowly closing his eyes. If he didn't like her, why force it? Yes, why force it? That's a question he should ask himself. This situation is all his fault, so who can he blame? He stroked his forehead and waved his hand. Go back, Rongning. Don't come back to the palace. Just live your life freely outside. This was the only time I ever saw the emperor. It seemed as if nothing was said. But it also seemed as if everything was said. I finally understood the sorrow that wore on my sister's face day after day. One wrong step, all the wrong steps. Since it's irreversible, we can only make the best of it. 19. I returned to the Gu mansion in a daze and saw Gu Mingyuan waiting at the door. Why did you come back so late? Did anyone in the palace give you a hard time? Sister's child is so well behaved. I played with him for a while longer. He put his coat on me and gently held my waist. Aining, don't be envious. Our child will surely be adorable and well behaved, too. Child. Now Gu Mingyuan was finally getting what he wanted. Call the doctor. Gu Mingyuan didn't react. What? I said call the doctor. His eyes suddenly widened in disbelief, a flicker of joy crossing his face. Aining, you. He wanted to hug me, but he didn't dare touch me. He stumbled out and told the servant beside him to hurry and fetch the doctor. He was as happy as a child, staying by my side the entire time, holding my hand. The doctor took my pulse and said I was 2 months pregnant. Gu Mingyuan gave the doctor a large red envelope and stared at my belly, almost staring a hole in it. Aining, I'm going to be a father. My first pregnancy was actually quite magical. My palm rested against my belly, and I could feel a life growing inside. She would grow from a swaddled baby into a full-fledged adult. When Qiyun found out I was pregnant, she secretly cursed Gu Mingyuan. You absolutely mustn't overwork yourself now. Just call me if you need anything. I'm not being squeamish. I'm not feeling anything right now. Qiyun was as if facing a formidable enemy. 10 months of pregnancy is a huge ordeal for a woman. Don't take it lightly. Okay, I'll be careful. Don't worry. As they spoke, Gu Mingyuan returned from court. He didn't wag his tail around me as usual. But his expression was solemn. When he saw Qi Yun, he didn't rush to send her away. Instead, he bowed to her, startling her. What is Lord Gu doing? Nan Yue has invaded our border. Today, His Majesty appointed me to lead the expedition. I'll be gone for 2 or 3 months at the earliest, or even 2 or 3 years at the longest. Aining and Miss Qi-san are close friends. I hope Miss Qi will take good care of me while I'm away. Qi Yun was shocked. I was stunned too. 20. Only after Qi Yun left did I regain my composure. Yes, His Majesty sent you. Gu Mingyuan, feeling down, gently embraced me. I have inherited the title of Marquis of Ningyuan, and I receive the Emperor's salary and share his worries. Moreover, Nanyue's invasion is damaging our country's prestige and endangering our people. In this moment of crisis, I must step forward. Today, I'm asking for your permission, Aining. This is my responsibility. My heart felt as if gently tapped, as if a moment of enlightenment dawned on me. This year, I'd treated Gu Mingyuan as someone to be dealt with, overlooking his status. He, too, had his own responsibilities and obligations. There was also a moment of relief. At least it wasn't the Emperor forcing him to fight. We are all rational, especially the supreme ruler. Aining, give me a thought. I looked up from his embrace. What thought? He still had a stubborn streak, and he kept asking me to embroider the character Ning on the cuff of each of his undershirts. When I sent him off to battle, he held my hand for a long, long time, unwilling to let go. Aining, wait for me to come back. I nodded and smiled at him. My lord, you will surely return victorious soon. But I didn't expect it to be such a tough battle. He hadn't returned from the campaign for 7 months when I gave birth. I gave birth to a lovely daughter, and old Madame Gu held her in her arms, adoring her. When Gu Mingyuan left, he said that if it was a son, he would name her Gu Zheng, and if it was a daughter, she would be Gu Jin. Supplements from the palace were delivered like a stream. When the child was 100 days old, the emperor conferred the title of princess. But Gu Mingyuan never returned. My father said that the battle was at a stalemate on the front lines, and that a traitor had appeared in Gu Mingyuan's army, and they had been severely attacked by the enemy. They had suffered heavy losses, and were running low on food and fodder. I was afraid they would struggle to hold on. My daughter grabbed the drumstick of the rattle and stuffed it into her mouth. I pulled it out and gently shook it. I understand. My father sighed. Son, even if you two were forced into marriage, you've already given birth to his child. Why are you still so cold to him? I laughed. If I wail and cry out in grief now, will he come back? You. My father walked away in a huff. 21. I stood up and headed for Laiju. Nanyue's offense was against Yongzhou, and Gu Mingyuan is now desperately defending Yongzhou city. This place isn't prosperous to begin with, and the traders' burning of food and fodder was a sudden event. It will take time for the imperial court to urgently allocate funds. I instructed the shopkeepers, every man is responsible for the fate of the nation. Today is the day we need to use the money we've earned. After Yongzhou comes Pingzhou, a wealthy city with 2 Laiju and 1 Qingfengtang. They're quite profitable, but it's not enough to feed and clothe the army. Today, I'd like to ask you to select a few trustworthy individuals from your bank and bill exchange to rush to Pingzhou. I've written to shopkeeper Li of Laiju in Pingzhou to help raise food and fodder. As you command, boss. Also, when raising funds, please contact Laiju and Qingfengtang's reputation spread, especially among major merchants. When asked, they would simply say that Boss Yunhe had voluntarily raised food and fodder for the army, stating that she never traded at a loss. Several shopkeepers instantly understood, we don't know how long this war will last, so getting more people to help would be great. Due to business needs, our communication network is extensive, providing more convenient business routes. The shopkeepers in Pingzhou were extremely helpful. Within 5 days, they had already delivered a batch of food and fodder to Yongzhou, alleviating their immediate needs. After that, the steady flow of food and fodder ensured a steady flow, boosting the morale of the soldiers. 22. 3 months later, news of Gu Mingyuan's triumphant return arrived. With it came Boss Yunhe's righteous reputation. The emperor personally inscribed the first tower in the capital upon Leiyu, and commended the merchants who had contributed to the battle. For a time, Leiyu, Qingfengtang, and Zwilixiang were bustling with customers. The shopkeepers were slaving away. The afternoon was quiet in the courtyard. I was planning to strike while the iron was hot and open a few more branches. I was determined to inherit the title of richest man from my uncle. My daughter lay in her cradle, babbling and chewing her fingers. I lay on the ground, studying the location for a new store. The sound of footsteps in the courtyard approached, casting a shadow over me. I looked up and saw Gu Mingyuan, dressed in military uniform, standing quietly by the door. "Aining, I'm back."